Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but first a quick word from my sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
Right, today I'm taking a look at Art Society. This game, again, I kind of glossed over, mainly because Art Society as a title doesn't exactly win me over, and I think I just missed it in the anticipated games. But this one from Mighty Boards was definitely one of the bigger hits of the show. It sold out within a couple of days to the point where when I got my review copy of this, thank you Mighty Boards, I was almost having to do it as a kind of black market deal, like, yeah, quick, give me the game. You know, I had to kind of keep it hidden because I was afraid I was going to get mugged for it. You know, it was definitely a popular title. People were definitely asking as I was chatting with Mighty Boards, you know, have you still got a copy of it left? There were a lot of demos going, so this felt like it was a hidden gem of the show for many people. So I was definitely interested to get my hands on it, especially when I realized that the designer is Mitch Wallace and not Martin Wallace, as I almost thought it was at first, which normally would be an off-put for me. Not to mention the cover with this indented thing where, you know, you can feel inside with the paintings is very weird, but also somewhat addictive. It's quite a weird cover. I thought, you know what, let's get stuck in. A light game with some auction elements that is showcasing about building an art gallery, which I quite like as a theme as well. Let's give it a shot and see if it's any good. Art Society is a light game about building your own little art gallery. You have different square and rectangle tiles that you will auction for each round, and you will place this on your board so that they're touching each other, but you are concerned with what types of paintings you get and where they go and what they're next to. Each round there is essentially an auction held where the person whose turn it is will choose a certain number of tiles based on player count, and they can pick any like mix of the tiles from this box. It's pretty cool how it's all laid in here, and the idea is that they'll all be laid out. So let's say, let's just say for giggles I take these 4 in this game. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the ones being auctioned. Everybody has a set of paddle bid cards numbered from 1 to 20 that are one use only for the game. And it's one of the 3 endgame triggers, all 20 of these being used. So there's only 20 rounds max. Although the game will never end by this because frankly it should end by other means by then. The idea is that you will basically look at what's out there and think, how much do I want that? Do I really want that painting? Are they going to want it? And you simultaneously, secretly, choose one of your bid cards, put it face down on a stack. The stack basically acts as a tiebreaker as you go down. And so you flip them over. Whoever's got the highest gets first pickings, and then it goes in order of that. Once you've got your tile, you figure out how you're going to place it on your board, touching something else. But there's certain things that you have to be aware of. Firstly, what frame does it have? In the art world, matching frames makes it look good. So if I've got a wooden frame here, I want to place it next to other wooden frame paintings. By doing so, you get to pick up these decor tokens, which are basically little 1, 2, or 3 sized tiles that can plug up spaces on your board, but they're also worth victory points. But then you also have to think about the type, because there are 4 different types of paintings, you know, mainly like scenery and portraits and stuff like that. But the idea is that in the art world, they don't like these types of paintings to be all next to each other. So if you get a yellow, for example, and you put another yellow next to it, it creates what's called a faux pas, and so this will mean that they won't score any points. On top of that, you've also got an eye level line on your board, which means that if they're really popular paintings, they'll score extra points for being in the eye line of a particular person. But how do these paintings score in general? Well, that comes from the prestige board, because whichever painting doesn't get picked in a round, you always have one more than the number of players, it will increase the prestige value of that painting by as much as the size of the tile. So a big tile left over could jump the prestige rating up quite a bit, whereas a small one will barely move it. At the end of the game, you'll rank them on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and they'll score more points if they're more prestigious, and the eye line is concerned with the most prestigious paintings. You essentially carry on until somebody's completed the whole gallery, or if they've had to drop paintings or put them aside because they didn't have room for them, not something that happens very often, but it's another consideration, then the game ends, you look at your gallery, you total up all the points, and of course, whoever's got the most.
Of course!
So from a spatial awareness point of view, if you've played a polyomino game, you've played this kind of thing. The idea of getting tiles and getting them on your board and trying to fit them in spots and obviously get them to go in the little gaps and stuff. If you've played any polyomino game at all, you know that kind of element. Although at least this one doesn't bother with Tetris pieces like something like Isle of Cats would, or, you know, what other games would there be that are Alice's Garden and Barron Park and stuff. You know, it's not concerned with weird T-shapes and stuff. It's all easy to follow shapes. It's just a case of spacing and what goes next to where. But one element that did stick out was the whole idea of choosing what's getting auctioned each round and then seeing what other people are going to do. That's come from games like Suburbia, and I think also Castles of Mad King Ludwig from Bezier Games. Those ones had you picking city tiles, and you were essentially trying to see, right, well, which city tile do I really want? Castles of Mad King Ludwig especially had you picking out the room tiles, and so you had to basically pay money based on which ones were brought out to get those particular rooms in your castle. Well, this is similar, except you don't have money, you have these bid cards, but they're one use only, so they are effectively your money for the game. But it's that thing, you're thinking, right, well, what do I want on my board, and what do other players not want on their board? I need a few of these shapes. Okay, so I'm going to take 3 of these, 2 of these, pop them on the board and see what goes. And then obviously you're thinking, well, now that they're all on show, how badly do I want one of those? So those similarities are there in other games. I don't think there's one game that's exactly like this, but this is definitely borrowing from a few other little games to create its unique whole. You can, if you like, per the rulebook, bring all the tiles out onto the board and have them in stacks.
That just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
Why would you bother? You know, the rulebook says you could just leave them in here, and this is where you would. This insert is great. It holds all the tiles with the numbers showing for each level in a nice slanted fashion, so that literally the setup for this game is so stupidly fast, it's unreal. Give everybody their 20 little bid cards and a board. Prestige board, middle of the table. Put these little things out for, you know, putting the tiles next to when you do your auction. Bag of decor tokens nearby, and box. Done. That is a pretty speedy setup, but during the game this is also really convenient because if we're playing on a small table, then people can just reach over and grab what they need for the auction phases. But then even when I've been on a large table, all you got to do is just pass them the box and they can just choose what they need, because you can see what the shapes are. You can't look at the tiles before you auction them, but you can at least go, oh yeah, that's probably a big enough shape, that's fine. And it's just very easy to pass this round. I mean, yes, I can only jiggle this so much before stuff goes flying, but if you're just reasonably careful with it, things will not fall out, especially as the infold is kind of like this, I don't know what it's called, it's felt. It's kind of the same fabric like a snooker table would have as its top, and it means that there's a decent amount of friction, which means that things aren't going to slide out by just moving it across the table. It's a neat idea, and they could have easily just said, you know what, bunch of tiles in here, bag them up and set them up into little piles. Remember, Rebuilding Seattle, when I did that review, that one wanted you to lay out all these tiles of different shapes and sizes and colours before the game was set up, and that was such a chore.
It's stupid! It's stupid!
The fact that this publisher was intelligent enough to think, you know what, that could get annoying, especially for a light game. Why don't we just build an insert that works and it will make life a lot easier? 10 out of 10 for this insert idea. I am so glad that finally a publisher is taking note of such things.
We just make boxes here.
The rules of this game, pretty straightforward. It didn't take me long to do that overview, did I? There's not a lot of rules in the game. I mean, this is a pretty thin rulebook. Most of the stuff you need is written on about 4 pages, really. Final scoring's on the back, setup is 1 page. This is a very easy game to teach, does not take long to get through the rules. Gateway level, no, I think maybe there's a little bit too much here for a gateway level person, but this is definitely light, and maybe a gateway level gamer could get into this, you know, but I think it's maybe 1 step higher than that. But yeah, you can be set up and rules taught in a pretty quick time, yet this gives you a lot of really good turn angsty choices. I particularly love 2 aspects in particular. The whole bidding thing. The idea that when you see what's out there, you've got these one-use cards and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, I could bid 12, 13, 11, but how much are you going to bid? You've got a lot of that particular frame. You're going to really want that. You haven't played that many high cards. Are you going to play a high card, and how high are you going to play it? You know, you don't know exactly what people are going to play, but you're thinking about it. You're concerned. You're thinking, well, do I play it safe, or do I go stick out my really high card knowing it's gone for the whole game? Or am I like, you know what, I don't care what I get, I'll just put my 1 out. And there are times when you can flip over a card and realize that your first pickings with barely a 7 played. And that's really cool. But then I've had times where I'm 3rd out of 4 players and I played an 18. You know, it's great reveals, but it is a cool turn angst and a cool way to do like a currency in this game without having you have actual money and complicating stuff. But what I particularly love, and this is brilliant design, I feel. Normally when you have something to pick from, like say I got a bunch of tiles here and I'm saying, right, I'm going to pick from these tiles. Normally there's 1, maybe 2 things you're thinking of when you're picking a tile. Here you have 4.
What?
4 different things to consider. Firstly, will it fit on my board? Is the shape good enough to fit where I want it to go? Okay, that's 1. Secondly, what type is it? I can only put certain types next to certain types because of the creating the faux pas. And I'm also looking at how much they're worth points-wise potentially at the end of the game, okay? So that is a second thing. Third, the frame. The frame, if I put frames next to different, to the same matching frame paintings, I can get these decor tokens. They're worth points, they plug up space, they're a great thing to have. But the fourth thing is what painting is likely to be left at the end of the turn, because the prestige markers are going to be moving on this point track at different rates. One might get a big head start, some might be really close together, and you're thinking, well, if I pick that blue, that means there's only yellows left. Yellow's going to go up, and probably by 3 or 9 points, I reckon you're going to take the small, so the 9's going to be left, which means that's going to skyrocket, maybe overtake the blue, and I'm already focusing a bit on blue. Maybe I don't want it to go that high. Do I take the other painting instead? This is, like, it's so many choices that aren't brain-burning. I mean, it shouldn't cause too much AP, but the fact that all of these are considerations, simple considerations, but a wealth of them, every time you pick a tile, and that is done anywhere between somewhere like, usually the game will end in about 15 rounds tops, so you're talking about maybe 12 to 15 rounds. You're doing it that many times during a game, it just feels so satisfying. Nothing about this is autopilot, nothing about this should be guesswork, apart from like choosing what card you're going to do and compare to other opponents, but there's just a lot of little things that weave together nicely to create meaningful choices that make you think, and that deserves credit. The whole spatial awareness thing is good fun as well. I mean, I like polyomino games where you're trying to put pieces together, but I like the fact that this isn't Tetris pieces, but it starts off being fairly easy as to where to put stuff, but then eventually you get to a point where it's like, uh-oh, space is a little bit limited, gotta watch out, and suddenly that spatial awareness comes in with more practice, you know, in greater emphasis. You can exchange paintings that have been given to the museum, the last one not picked and around, but, you know, you might not have something that you can exchange it with, and you have one assistant to hold something on a temporary basis, but if you can't fit it anywhere and you're totally stuffed, you've got to drop it next to your board, a bit like the tiles in Mosaic, and it counts as negative points. But if somebody does that twice, it ends the game prematurely. Now, that being said, I've never played a game where the game has ended in that fashion, but the risk is always there, and you're obviously trying to avoid it. The gamebook says 2 to 4 players, 30 to 60 minutes. That's maybe a little optimistic. I think it's more accurate to say about 45 to 75. This game shouldn't take you 90 minutes, but occasionally a 4-player game has, if you do have those players who do AP a little bit. But for the most part, this game should end pretty quick. 3-player is a good sweet spot with a decent amount of interaction and not too much time length. 2-player is pretty lightning fast, but I think 30 minutes is pushing it unless you really know what you're doing and you're picking stuff nice and quick. But this is not a long game, and it scales well at those player counts. Yes, you know, there's not like, oh, I do something directly to your thing, but with multiple players in the game, you have got to consider all their different boards. What are they collecting? What frames are they likely to take? It's not just ignore the other players. Yes, you don't care what they do on their own board, except for the fact that when you look at their board, you're like, you can't fit a lot of big shapes anymore because you filled up your board quite early. Well, you know what? 9, 8, 9, 8, you know, you can do that. And Certainly, it is impossible to play this game without people making countdown jokes. You know, every game I do, I pretty much write down someone's going to make countdown references on a piece of paper. I put it face down on the table, and as soon as someone does it, I flip it over because it's so easy to predict. The amount of times I've been called Carol when I've been like fishing stuff out of the box, you know, it's like, you're not picking consonants and vowels, but you might as well be. It feels like that. You know, I'll have 2 8s and a 5, please, Carol. And it's like, shut it. You know, the joke gets old quite quick. But yeah, you know, it does a good job at scaling well for players, being pretty quick. And even though it's not a ton of direct interaction, there's still interaction. I'm still interested in what the other players are doing, and that's hard for a lot of games to do these days. You know, I don't regret playing this with 2. I don't regret playing this with 4. I think it scales nice and evenly. There's not a lot of bad stuff to say about this game, honestly, but there are 2 niggles that I have discovered. Firstly, there is a little bit of a luck element here, because yes, you can pick which tiles you want to go from a shape perspective, but you have no idea what frames they'll be, what types they'll be. You could be in a situation where you need certain types, certain frames, and you pick 5 tiles in a 4-player game, and none of them are what you want. But then somebody else happens to get a bunch of them, and it's like, oh yeah, perfect, there's one that I desperately want, no one else is going to pick it, I can pick a low one, and I get off scot-free. Some of that does come into play, and it is a little bit noticeable, and you're going to have to get comfortable with that. And it did take me a little bit to get comfortable with it. You know, luck is definitely going to favor some people now and again, but it's a light game. It's not long. This isn't like a vast, strategic, epic length game. It's a short, you know, bidding, spatial awareness game. But yeah, if you're not comfortable with luck maybe favouring the fortunate at times, then you may want to stay away, or perhaps you won't like this one as much. But you do at least get to pick what shapes you want, so you are mitigating that to an extent. And of course, if you try and get yourself into a point where you are just searching for one colour with one frame or something, then, well, you kind of brought it on yourself. You do need to leave yourself a little bit flexible.
I like your plan, except it sucks.
The other part that I have noticed is that the scoring, I'm not saying this game is unbalanced, but there certainly is a couple of aspects that the rules kind of emphasise a bit more than they should. Really, the stuff that is getting you points is 2 things. The decor tokens, because they can add up to a lot if you've managed to match the frames, which makes matching frames really important in this game, but also the prestige value. That's really what's getting you your points. If you've got more paintings that are 1st and 2nd level prestige compared to somebody else who's mostly got 3rd and 4th, you will beat them. You know, they're not going to catch up. But there's a couple of elements to scoring which feel kind of arbitrary, or I feel needed to be emphasized a bit more. You have got -2 points on 4 corners of your board, okay? Covering all 4 of these by the end of the game is pretty straightforward. It's not difficult at all. At most, somebody has lost -2 because they haven't done one of the corners by the end, and that's because they've probably forgotten it was a thing. But it's there in the scoring. It's only -8 if you were to miss all of them. You know, scores can be anywhere between something like, you know, the 50s to the 70s by the time you've ended the game, so a -2 is not a big deal, and you're never going to lose -8, because I can't imagine how you would build your board in such a way that you would deliberately omit to cover those spaces. But then the other factor is that the whole dropping a painting because you can't fit anything rarely happens. Somebody might drop one painting and get a -2, but that's it. It's not that impactful. And the game has never ended as a result of someone dropping 2 paintings. Never. Never have I seen that. So really, despite the fact that you have 3 endgame conditions, you really only have 1, which is somebody fills up their board. That will happen every single time before one of the other 2. Now, maybe a group of experienced gamers with this are somehow able to really cleverly use that dropping 2 paintings rule, but it's going to be rare that that's the thing. And then lastly on this fact, you get 5 points for filling out your entire board. What, that's it? 5 points? That seems pretty minor compared to the fact that one decent high prestige painting is 5 points. It really doesn't amount to much, and a lot of the times the person who fills out their board first loses because they focus so much on trying to cover their board that they haven't got the right paintings for the prestige markers or the decor tokens to do it with. Art Society could be one of the biggest hidden gems that I found this convention. I mean, I've talked praise about Sweet Mess, and Sweet Mess definitely was a hidden gem, but man, I would have looked at this game, the way it looked, the cover, you know, the title of it, and just maybe glossed it on by, or just thought, yeah, whatever. This has really surprised me about how good this was. I can see exactly why this sold out in 2 days. Now, maybe they just didn't bring enough copies to Essen. I don't know how much Mighty Boards managed to get off the freight ship or whatever, but I can see why this was popular. I can see why it sold out, and I can see why people were keen to get a copy of this when it had sold out. I saw queues trying to grab it, so it's not like it was spur of the moment. No, the demos were always filled, people were always playing it, and I see why. This is a fantastic game. I think it gives you a lot of cool, meaningful choices, particularly with the choosing of a tile. 4 different things to think about. That's amazing. The storage insert makes setup an absolute breeze. The game itself is simple to teach. It's not a hard one to play. The turns are simultaneous, which means that the downtime is mitigated as well, because other than somebody freezing up as to what tiles they want to pick, you should be involved for the whole game. There's just a lot of stuff that it does well. It scales well with 2 to 4 players. It doesn't outstay its welcome. You know, the aesthetics could be a bit more enticing for an art game, you know, but, you know, it does what it needs to do. Those 2 problems I mentioned in the bad thing are mainly small things, but they are a factor. But I don't think they ruin what is a really great game. I think this is one of my favourite games I've played this year. I think it's well designed. I can't think of that many bad things to say. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. I think this is really, really good. If you want to give this a try, I will happily teach it to you. I just think for the simplicity of the game and how much meaningful thinking and choices it gives you, for the light rules, the short play time, the decent player scaling, I wish it looked a bit nicer on the table. Okay, it's a negative. I wish the spatial element was more of a thing. Yeah, it's a negative. But remember, a 10 out of 10 is not a perfect game. Perfect games like my Ark Nova, Spirit Islands, Sentinels of the Multiverse can have flaws. And certainly there are many games I've given a 10, so where this ranks amongst all them remains to be seen, but it just does so many things right. And as this type of game, you know, a spatial awareness, simultaneous bidding game, this is going to be a benchmark that I use. This whole prestige thing is definitely the focus of the game, and I think it's a good amount of fun. Yeah, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. You want a light game that's potentially gateway level, but just, you know, is a bit of a departure from the usual polyomino thing, but gives you some meaningful choices with a quick setup and takedown, then look no further than Art Society. You know, I've not poo-pooed, but, you know, I've not been blown away by some of Mighty Board's stuff recently. You know, I didn't really go much for Hamlet, didn't go much for the Vengeance roll and fight and stuff, but this one is a hit. This one is going to be the one that I say, oh, have you heard of Mighty Boards? You might want to check out Art Society. It really is that good.
I don't think any of us expected him to say that.
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the site. Check out all the other Essen reviews I've been doing. There is a ton of them. I mean, I've just recorded, this is the 4th one I've recorded tonight. There's a lot of them. And by all means, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with me that this is fantastic? Or have I maybe overhyped it a bit? You know, have I missed something? Did those niggles bother you more, or is there something else about this game that bothers you? You know what? I'd be interested to know, because I've not heard a lot of people talk about this game, and I kind of want to know your thoughts. Hopefully I'll be one of the first channels to talk about it to a great extent. That isn't a preview channel. So, you know, maybe I should get this review up pretty sharpish. We'll see. It's not like I've got a strict order to these things. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be glad to read them. So take care, and remember, regardless of how much you're willing to bid for this lovely painting of a trumpet, it's still only a game. Bye for now, everyone.